we're with you. All right. So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Valerie Smith. I'm joined by Jonathan Payne.
Hello.
And today we'll be talking about John's transition experience. So just before we get started, to give you a little overview of where we are in the University of Rochester. So you'll see on our main screen here, we are part of a program called the Rochester Regional Center for Autism Spectrum Disorder. We're housed within the Division of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics, called the Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities. And what that is, we're a university center for excellence in developmental disabilities. We serve individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities across the age span. So even though we're in that pediatrics division, we do serve individuals across the lifespan. So here you'll see another network. It's called the New York State Regional Center for Autism Spectrum Disorder. We are the center there represented by the blue 12 counties, and you'll see that we're one of 7 actually across the state. So we are all affiliated with a university, and we focus on information dissemination and research specific to autism. So I invite you to check out our website and learn a little bit more about some of our other programs. We love doing our webinar series, and then we often have community conferences all throughout those blue counties that you'll see there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, John. I will go ahead and read his bio, and then we will pass it off. So Jonathan Payne is an office assistant at the University of Rochester Medical Center. He graduated with a Regents Diploma from Odyssey Academy in Greece in 2015 and completed Project Search in 2017, and we'll tell you a little bit about Project Search as well. He currently supports several community programs at the Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities and Levine Autism Clinic, Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics. Jonathan is a strong advocate for the Spread the Word to End the Word campaign and a participant in New York State Partners in Policymaking. He enjoys connecting with the Rochester community and is excited to grow his career in advocacy. So without further ado, I have the privilege of introducing my colleague and friend, Jonathan, and take it away. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah, pleasure. Hello. So this is going to be my first webinar. I'm a little bit nervous, but we'll just go ahead and get to the next slide. What do I press? Oh, never mind. So this is entitled, this part is before the path was directed, as in like, this was before I graduated my high school life. I had just been considered different, and mainly in special education. I didn't really feel like I was, included within my school. I didn't feel as welcomed because, you know how people are at a young age. And so in turn, I kept to myself, and I had learned why I would react certain ways at that time. Why would I be angry or agitated? Why would I say this or that whenever this would occur or that would occur? How does that affect me? How do I improve and change the way I react? It's sort of like how one would have a niche to react to something, like a certain itch or a certain sound. So that's when I had to study myself. So I had to be more of someone that was not as social. I had to be more isolated in order to understand and figure things out. And that was all after I had made a vow to represent my family. My great-grandfather, who passed away a few years back. This would be my grandpa's father, actually. His name is Payne. And every day I think of how I am improving and how much more I can do every day with his blessing, my family's blessing, and more. So this was getting close to graduation. Path directed, not understood. I didn't understand how everyone was just directed to college at the time. to represent Odyssey, and I had a feeling I needed to choose my own path, but at the time I didn't feel as though I would have the push to know where I wanted to go. So, although my school wanted most of us to be college students, as in like you need like this average amount of points in order to be accepted into a college, then they would give us like, here's a few selected colleges locally. And I didn't know what I wanted to go for. I didn't know where I wanted to be, but I tried college for my family. And as I graduated, I figured as though I wanted out of special education. I got out of it 2 years prior, and I was really glad for that, because if I hadn't have improved on my grades, if I hadn't have challenged myself, I would have stayed another year. And just figuring that out was shocking. This is my attempt. As I grew accustomed to college life, I started to feel out of place. I tried to make friends. I tried to improve. I just didn't feel like I was meant to be there. And seeing some familiar faces from my high school day, that just caused me stress, because I would bump into them and a little bit of talk here and there, but I just got stressed, depressed. Therefore, I didn't do as much work. I didn't catch up with my class, and I decided to back off. I only had 2 classes there, just an entry level like plan, considering I didn't pass the entry test, and an online course as well. And like I said, I didn't go for me, and I didn't know what I was going there for either. But soon I had enough, and I decided to plan leave. And I'm glad my family understood and told me it was okay. I still felt guilty and ashamed. The stillness and silence ensued for me. I was lost and still in time. This represents a still long road of waiting on the corner of the screen, with little to nothing left to keep me going. I was mainly alone in my room, just doing nothing but looking at a TV screen, whether it be watching a show or playing a game, just to keep me out of the reality. Leaving college made my path just seem endless, with weight over my shoulders of decisions I made, having me wonder for days, as it had been months without progress. And my provider, my access provider, Jennifer Geiger, just kept pushing me with another offer after another until an opportunity came.
Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
So this opportunity that's leading for me, I decided to go with my gut when being offered to try Project Search by my VR counselor.
There are more than
She
20.
said how the results will bring opportunity and success.
You are
I'm glad I stopped and made up my mind finally to try this out. I didn't want to be on an empty and blind road to nowhere, considering that I had enough. I mean, I'd be going to a hospital and working. Finally, I get to get up, get out and move already. So after that, it was set sail. Project Search. I didn't see this coming, but I'm glad I did. as depicted on the corners in a road building. That's how I felt. I felt like I was building my own path through the University of Rochester, through my 2 internships. I started halfway. With Project Search, you get 3 internships. I started in December or after December. So I was given 2 internship sites. At first, I didn't know about office work and everything, but then I thought it would be like just at a desk the whole day. I didn't know I'd be doing this today. I didn't know I'd be going from one building to another. I didn't know I would be working with so many amazing people. And being an office assistant is a lot more work than just pushing a pen or pressing on a computer. It was fun. And getting to know my colleagues, Val, getting to know my colleague, Jennifer and Kate Richardson and Susan Hetherington. Fantastic people. I decided throughout the middle of that internship to just go up my gut again. I asked Susan Hetherington if it'd be possible for me to submit a resume. And she had told me during the middle of it, next week, if you're okay with that, you can get one by me next week. And I said, okay. So I did that. And then with Cafe 601, after leaving the office, it got me into a different environment, running left and right to make sure the salad bar was in stock, making sure the coffee was still brewing and hot, that you didn't breathe in the fumes from the hotline, all the steam as you were serving breakfast. I had to keep myself at a fast pace and made sure that I kept my energy up throughout the whole time and always keep track of everything and clean everything afterward. And during my lunch, I made sure, got my lunch set. Then as soon as my lunch was done, I made sure I got off of it at least 5 minutes early, just so I can see what's next. After a few months of waiting, after graduating Project Search, I just felt amazed by the opportunity I had. And then the patience of waiting for a while for that, I had a gut feeling I'd get something. And I did. I got a call and an email on my birthday, July 7th, and I was just like, okay. I mean, I would have been really excited about it, but it seemed as though I didn't check that day, and I seen it 2 days later. I was like, oh my God, I got to call back. I got to email back. So I had to put in another resume during that time, and then I'd wait longer, and I was okay with it. I knew I'd get it. So I had started in, I believe I started in August. And it was amazing. Finally working, moving around again, not staying home. It's just amazing opportunity. And I could just go at a stride. Ever since I got accepted into this division, I have been immensely honored to be part of this team. Like, there's a purpose for me working here. I have an experience in my life of going through what the division is working on to help improve lives of those with disability. And I don't think I'd be working anywhere else. This is where I want to be. There's one thing I like to go by, and that's to carve your own path. You don't go with the crowd. You don't always have to go with the advice given. You just got to make sure you hear the advice heard. I feel as though a path should be built by the person in question, as in the individual. I'm glad I decided to build my path. I'm glad I went with my gut to go to Project Search. with the help of Jennifer Geiger and my family, with transportation. I'm still trying to get my license. It's one of my goals. I have a few set goals still I have to go to. And then going with it again, throwing in my resume to get either this job or the Cafe 601. Both contacted me back. I'm glad I got to go with this group here. And if you have any questions, you can type them on the side, or you can voice on in.
Thanks so much for sharing your story. And folks, I'd invite you to, like John said, to use the chat box, or you'll have the ability to unmute yourself. So we'll take a few minutes. Feel free to ask Jonathan some questions about his experience through graduating high school, trying out college courses, and then through his internship at Project Search, and ultimately being hired at the university. And then I also have some questions for you, John. And then what we'll do is share some resources that John had mentioned in the last couple slides. And we'll also make those slides available to you following today's webinar. So take a few minutes, either unmute yourself, or we'll read out the questions that are coming through the chat.
What did you find the most challenging thing for you on this journey?
I think the most challenging is giving chances. Back when I was in high school, I didn't trust really anything. I didn't trust many people. I didn't trust many programs or resources. So after developing more of a trust for those that wanted to give me opportunity, wanted to show that I could go through these like programs, and this one right here with Project Search, I am indebted to this, and indebted to Access VR and JobPath for helping me out.
I remember, John, when you got the offer from both sites at the university, so the cafe and in our division, and I'm pretty sure we were fighting over you.
What were any barriers that you might have met in the process?
I think one is just getting over the depression I had in my past and the stress that of just sitting still. I didn't like it at all. It made me feel almost worthless. And now that I'm here, I rarely get those feelings. So it's a battle, and I'm glad I'm winning.
Something you mentioned during your presentation was that you would sit at home and play video games or watch TV as an escape to knowing that you weren't doing other things. What was it that got you out of that place and helped motivated you to look for other opportunities?
I think mainly it's just out of nowhere, just realizing where I was and the fact that I'm getting older. I need to do something about it. I shouldn't be doing this all the time. I shouldn't be still. I need to do something with my life.
So you're pretty self-aware.
Yeah, and thanks to Jennifer Geiger.
I think Jennifer asks, John, how did Project Search do the most?
I think just getting me back, like, you know how sometimes you need to just get back on the edge of like working, getting back on the edge of like having to think real quick, and just reevaluating yourself when it comes to working on the job, getting your resume redone, updated, and being prepared for interviews, being prepared with how you act, how you dress. I especially put a lot of pride in how I dress.
So it sounds like the activity level and actually doing something was what helped you. What supports, John, are you still using today to retain your goals?
I am using the support of my family most of all, and in regard to actual programs out there, I am using my path, paths, wow, everywhere. And also, I believe it's called Epilepsy Prelude, which also helps me outside of work, not too often, but just to get lifetime goals, like how I want to get the driver's license so that way I can be the one driving to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Job Path, is that a job coach?
Yes, my job coach. I don't know if he'd be okay with me saying his name out loud.
You don't need to say his name. That's okay.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, he helps me out. He checks in. In the beginning of me starting my job coach would check in twice, maybe 3 times a week, just to see how I'm adjusting. And that was about a year ago. And now we're still good friends. He checks on me like maybe once, twice a month now, as a way of showing like, hey, you're building, you're more used to the job, you're doing so much, you're getting in so many meetings. I don't have that much room to jump in and check on you. So I often call or text to see how things are going and to ask for advice when needed.
Okay, so how did you work through your depression, and did you seek counseling?
I didn't seek counseling at the time, but all I did was just hope for the best, really. I'm a religious person, and I often prayed, and I often stuck with my family. If I ever had anything on my mind that was getting to me, I'd often talk to family or a close friend or two to give me some sound advice.
So family and faith.
Yeah.
Stacy asks, how did you know to contact an organization like Project Search to help you with your journey?
Well, it wasn't me that contacted them. It was my Access VR provider, Jennifer Geiger. I thank her for it, and I need to contact her more often.
How did you get in touch with Access VR?
Through my high school, I believe. I don't know if it was through the counselors there or through some other form, but either way, if it hadn't been for Jennifer Geiger extending my case at that time, I wouldn't be here. It would have been closed and pushed to somebody else to do it.
So high school linked you with Access VR, and Access VR got you with Project Search, which got you here.
Yeah. Yeah.
What tips would you give to others that are going through a transition from school into the real world?
From school into the real world, I think really just to get your connections, get the resources needed in order to go where you want to be. Like, if I can think back in high school, I wanted to do construction, I wanted to do architecture, but I didn't have the connections at the time, and then I went through a phase of wanting to be a writer. So I had talked with an actual writer, and I was told a depressing, hey, a lot of people post the same stuff, and you might not get that much sold out there. So those are 2 ideas that went back. But with my Access VR provider and the opportunity to given to me through this hospital, and the fact that I'm working not at I'm just working at a personal level of I live the experience. I've noticed, I've seen the differences of how things impact others with disabilities, and also with my brother as well, that also has autism.
Somebody asks, do you see others following your example in the near future?
Since I started working here, my boss, Kate Richardson, had suggested for me to work with Project Search more closely, to be a role model and teach interns every year. And I have had the most amazing experience to see more graduates through that internship graduate, and also at various points also get jobs. Last year, we've had, I think, almost more than half of the class at that time ended up getting jobs, more than half. And I was proud ever since. And now with the class I have this year, I am even more grateful to have this opportunity to see people receive job applications, to get offers, and then to go and grow. And I believe we still have a few that are working here as actual employees in our hospital. And we have another program starting by our division called Job Club. Now, it's still in development here and there, but we still keep in touch with those that were with us before.
So somebody said you would be a great peer support for someone in the beginning phases of this journey, which relates to what you were saying, because you are doing that.
Yeah.
With Job Club, with Project Search.
Yeah.
All of that. Somebody else says you're a great role model to follow what you want and not to do it for others, but to do it for yourself.
Yeah. I thank you for that. It's really been difficult trying to go from following to actually leading, like myself, because there's things that I want to do. I want to work. I want to live. I want to be able to go out and like eat at places. I want to be able to continue my creative hobby, which is to paint and draw and build.
I have a question for you. How has working changed other aspects of your life?
The fact that I can afford what I want to do. That's one thing. Like, I want to go out more, so I was able to go to like restaurants or like a nice place to hang out or go to community events here and there. And then there's my expensive hobby that I'm trying to back off on for a bit because I got too much. Got too many paints and stuff in my room now. And another thing about like working is just I am happy to be here, to work with everyone, and to be part of helping others is just the biggest part.
So Jonathan, you touched a lot on I'm thinking too on the participants in today's webinar. We have some individuals who are transitioning, educators, those in support roles, as well as some parents, caregivers, and families. So my question for you, and some of this you touched on, is specific to advice for other adults transitioning, perhaps from school to college or school to an internship or work. What any other words of wisdom or advice for them?
Besides to stick to your gut, I'd say if you feel as though, I think another thing is the trust. Trust those around you that want to help you succeed. Trust those that are looking out for you.
And what about for the educators on the call or those supporting individuals transitioning?
When it comes to helping an individual, people learn different ways. Some learn visually, some learn written, some learn a mixed way. It's just everyone learns differently. And same thing goes for some people teach differently as well or understand differently. So if you can develop a way to connect more with the person you're teaching through that, then see a lot more improvement, because some old ways of teaching do have to be changed day in and day out.
And then lastly, advice for the parents, caregivers, or other family members on the line.
To support and understand. Yet again, that's what I'm sticking with as my answer. And if you're not, like, if you're looking into programs now, I definitely say going through Access VR, and to definitely try out Project Search.
So it sounds like being focused on the individual's goals, whether it's yourself, whether it's your family, or whether it's a teacher, is really individualize what you're doing.
Yeah.
Provide that support.
Thanks. Any other questions for Jonathan before we move on to some resources for you?
And feel free to send Jonathan an email and ask him additional follow-up questions.
Perfect. All right, so John mentioned some great things about Project Search. Just real quick, this program initially started out in Cincinnati, and it's grown over the years, and we're so fortunate for that. And specific to New York State, we actually have 21 different sites. So John had mentioned those local ones here in Rochester are within the hospital at the Med Center, in the city, at Wegmans, and then we have a couple new adult programs as well. So the program initially, I think, is 18 through 21 years of age, and then adults, we have some specific adult programs for 21 and over.
Mm.
So some links there for you, and again, we'll make sure that these slides are available to you so that you have these to reference in the future. Access VR, which stands for our Adult Career and Continuing Education Services, Vocational Rehabilitation. It's a long one, so we call it Access VR. A great resource. Check out, we'll make sure to give you a link as well to check out their eligibility criteria and any questions that you might have for them. We also included here some New York State Commission for the Blind as another potential resource. Here's a bit about the Access VR office location. So there's that link to check out and see which region covers your location and where you are at. And this is just a reminder, you know, that K through 12, we are lucky to have a system that gives us direction, but to keep in mind for adults, there are often services that require some eligibility criteria. So similar to that, OPWDD, many of us might be familiar with this already, Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. Related to employment, they use person-centered planning. And similar to OPW is OMH, the Office of Mental Health. So that's a couple different programs, including outpatient, emergency, residential, employment, family care. And those eligibility criteria vary. So I would suggest to check out their website by using this link, attend what's called a front door session, where you would meet with basically a counselor to kind of hear about eligibility criteria, ask some questions about next steps, and then how OPW could support you in your transition. My Path New York is another great resource that we'd recommend. It's a free website, and what's really cool is that folks can go on, they will answer individualized questions, and then it'll spit out a report at the end specific to that individual. It'll ask you questions to help navigate those tricky systems like OPW and Access VR. Navigate benefits as well. We often hear from those transitioning that, you know, there's some anxiety about accepting a job with fear, because of fear of losing other benefits. So this site actually has a calculator built right in to kind of help you navigate what that would look like. And there's a link there for a demo that our Director of Employment, Kate Richardson, who John had mentioned, can walk you through and show you how to best use the site to its full potential. Specific to college transition, we had listed here, there's one specific to the U of R called the Center on Disability and Education. similar to, you might have heard of Think College at the national level. So we wanted to include the link there. And specific information, there's an email for Mary Judge. That one I also think includes the tour program. So if there are students interested in trying out college classes and some volunteer and work experiences, internships on a college campus too, to check out or contact Mary. Specific to self-advocacy, here's a couple different links. John, you in your bio too, we mentioned that you are partaking in the New York State Partners in Policy Making. How has that helped with advocacy skills?
Actually, I think it was in the middle of them doing a different way of teaching.
Okay.
So, and with my time schedule, I had to not take part in it actually. Yeah. And maybe in the future, I might be.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we included that link there. A couple other Center for Disability Rights, CNEs, which is it's a specific to autistic adults. Do you know what
self-advocacy?
Is it self-advocacy? I'm sorry, I thought that there was another one that they call. Jen, you might know off the top of your head. We can send it out. Yeah, something for as they identify as autistic adults. Okay. Other transition resources, just some more ILCs, independent living centers, and some special education parent centers. We have those throughout the state as well. And the map there is also tricky because you'll look at your region. So if you follow that link, you can see which education parents at your county. And then before we wrap up, I just wanted to give a pitch for our next webinar hosted by the Regional Center for Autism Spectrum Disorder, specific to mental health and autism. So that will be on April 19th, again at noon, with clinical psychologist Dr. Leona Oakes. And there's a registration link, very similar process to how you joined us today. So before we wrap up, I'd like to offer the opportunity again to our participants for any questions for Jonathan or any of our resources, and we will do our best of our ability to answer those specific to the resources and make sure that you get those slides. One other thing I'd like to note is that you'll receive a evaluation survey, and we invite you to give us feedback on today's webinar, as well as other ideas for future webinars. We're always looking to know the needs of our community and learn about what we could do to collaborate to offer this information. And a certificate of attendance, if I'm not mistaken. John, you've got a couple comments coming in. Great job, and good luck in your continued path.
Oh, thank you so much.
Any last words to wrap us up?
Well, it's just I feel blessed to have went from my experience in high school to today, and I'm glad I got to share it with everyone. It's been a real trip because I didn't even, before even doing this, I didn't think about talking about my past as much. I didn't think about any of that. Going back there, I had to go through some barriers to go find that out in order to talk about it all today. So I just feel like I could definitely work on sharing these moments I've had. And I think I've gone through a barrier today by sharing it with everyone.
Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to call in with us today and share your story and advice for others transitioning. I think I speak for all of us here in the division that we are lucky to have you, and I'm so glad that we had the privilege of working with you in Project Search and then extend that opportunity for employment. So it's been a real honor. So thank you so much for presenting, and folks, thanks again for joining in, and we hope to see you again in the future.